It gladdens our hearts that we have indeed commenced what we envision to be Africa's vision of the likes of the Offshore Technology Conference held annually in Houston and the Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference held annually in Abu Dhabi, UAE. After several decades of petroleum exploration and exploitation in Nigeria, this event is long overdue. However, as the popular saying goes, it's better late than never. Once again, on behalf of NNPC, let me particularly appreciate the vision of our Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Emmanuel Ibekachukwu, for working tirelessly to ensure that today's event comes to fruition. Your efforts will nurture this event to a full-fledged international summit, just as did the mature energy that continues to focus on Nigeria. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the organizers of this program, in conjunction with other stakeholders, envision this event as the premier African Technology and Business Conference. This is evidenced by the appreciable number of distinguished oil and gas heavyweights present here. Once again, I acknowledge the presence of Your Excellencies, the Secretary Generals of OPEC, GECF, IEF, and APO. Your presence underscores the very importance of this occasion. We thank you for the support. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, discussions are expected to cut across the industry value chain with focus areas on deepening collaboration across and within the African oil and gas space, modern technologies in the industry, innovative strategies to survive after a global downturn, current trends in the oil and gas markets, gas to power, prospects and opportunities, policy and regulation, sustainable socio-economic development of the Niger Delta, as well as lessons learned so far from the Nigerian experience. To surmise it all, the organizers have put up a robust program to keep you energized for the next 5 days. Our expectation is that at the end of the summit, a communique will be issued to give action points for current and potential African oil and gas countries for better collaboration and development. As I scan through the list of invited speakers and panelists, I'm convinced we'll be able to frame new strategies and come up with practicable solutions for effectively developing Africa's hydrocarbon resources. On our part, I want to say that it is high time that African countries collaborate and trade amongst each other, not only in terms of oil and gas, but in other key sectors. One of the key takeaways from an event of this nature is the networking opportunities and the strategic partnerships we make to better not just our industry, but also our respective economies. No one will do it for us. The onus lies on us to do for ourselves. I have full confidence that the discussions and interests alike will stir up strategies and actionable items that will crystallize into a veritable roadmap for our industry and indeed our energy future. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, once again, the NNPC family welcomes you to the 2018 Nigeria International Petroleum Summit. To our invited guests from outside the country, we welcome you to Nigeria and specifically welcome you to the beautiful city of Abuja. You've already heard from Dr. Omotusho how beautiful the city is and the near size near the city all of them within 1 hour's drive. Please find some time to enjoy your warm hospitality. On this note, I want to once again appreciate the organizers for this conference for a job well done, and also for the privilege accorded me to present this goodwill message. I wish you all successful deliberations. Thank you for coming.
Please, one more applause for the Group Managing Director of the NNPC, reminding us that this summit is put together to look for innovative trends in developing Africa's oil and gas industry. Your Excellencies, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when the American oil and gas industry some 50 years ago or more had the challenge of developing technology to drive down costs and to improve the development of that industry, a conference started. Fast forward 49 years after, that conference has become a global trend. It's called the OTC. The African oil and gas industry needs new technologies to drive down costs. We need to break down the silos that we're operating in and build bridges to make local content work better on the continent. And this man has brought us together through his commitment and his patriotism. He's undaunted and he is sagacious. Please welcome the Honorable Minister of State, Petroleum Resources of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for his address. Welcome, Dr. Emmanuel Ibe Kachuku.
Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, ably represented by the Secretary, the Government of the Federation, Engineer Boss Mustafa. Permit me all to stand on the protocol paraphernalia that's been said by Dr. Makanti Baru. It was exhaustive enough. I don't want to go through it. So I'm just going to stand by that. I thank my brother ministers who are here present. Sadly thank His Excellency, the Secretary Generals of OPEC, GCF, IEA, and Apple, who have found time out of their busy schedules to come here today. I also thank my brother ministers from other African countries who are either here in person or represented by their own delegates. I am absolutely delighted that you are here today. I was at OTC last year for what might have been my fourth attendance at OTC in my 30-year span in the oil industry. And there I declared that the attendance of Nigerians to OTC had become an international jamboree. We have an average of 400 to 500 Nigerians attending OTCs every year. Huge amounts of foreign investment, of foreign exchange spent. And quite frankly, with every due respect, only a small percentage of those who attended OTC spent time really in OTC business. And it had become more an export of cultural tourism for the US, import of cultural tourism for the US, and an export of foreign exchange from Nigeria. So last year I declared that was going to be my last OTC attendance as minister. No tie in the hands of my successors, of course. But I also declared that no government fund will be used to sponsor people to OTC anymore. But any Nigerian who wanted to attend the OTC and could afford it should feel free to pay the bill. And that there was a need for us to set up the equivalent of an OTC here in Africa, not only to energize the oil sector, but also to help us bring together our African brothers and sisters who are looking to us for leadership in this sector. We're the largest oil-producing country in Africa, probably the largest gas-producing country in Africa. We have been in this business for nearly 50 years. And we have had our ups and downs, and they certainly needed to learn from our own ups and downs. And I felt that there was no better way to do it than to bring the investors here to Nigeria. The difficulty about attracting investments when you attend OTC is that you end up being the investor visiting. Everybody attends and everybody tells you what you can do. And there was a need for them to come here and visit us and see what potentials lie in this country for investment, and not just in this country, but in Africa. This is the very first edition, so I apologize if there are any limitations, but I'm very encouraged by the moment attendance of all the dignitaries in this sector during this conference. The next 4 days will be very engaging, very intellectually refreshing, but also very snapshotish of some of the things that we can achieve as a continent. The reality is that the global world of oil is changing, and I wouldn't cover that space too much before the Secretary General of OPEC speaks. But the reality is that today, if you cannot produce cheap cost oil, if you cannot diversify the processing of your oil, if you cannot look to, quite frankly, internalizing and externalizing the investments in the sector, so your people are as important as your foreign investors, if you cannot capture the requisite technology skills that are essential to help you operate efficiently, you are lost before you start. In another 10 to 15 years, export of crude oil as we know it will be a shameful harbinger for any country that is doing it. And if you look at the movement in the Gulf, if you look at even the United States that had exited, quite frankly, production of oil, everybody is coming at it from a different angle. Shale in the US, diversification in the Gulf, and so much more is going on. And in clean energy focus is beginning to make almost irrelevant the vast reserves of crude oil that we have in the ground, unless you can turn them into things that are clean. So the challenge for oil companies who are operating here, and the challenge for Nigerians who are in this sector has changed. Historically, our business was to find the oil, sell it, put foreign exchange in the hands of FAC, and move on. It's got to be better than that now. Oil has got to provide work for our people. Oil has got to provide the resource to power this country. Oil has got to provide the operational environment that is transparent enough for others to take Nigeria serious. Oil has got to provide the technical and human skill set that is essential for us to export people out into other African countries and to become major investors in other African countries, something the banking sector has tried to do successfully over the last 6 to 7 years. So there is a lot of challenge in this, and I thought that the OTC equivalent here will begin that process of re-engaging. I expect that future OTCs will have, quite frankly, a research room which shows the latest technologies. Last week I was at Egina, in Lagos to open up to house the Egina FPSO. And I was, quite frankly, amazed by the sheer exploratory grounds that that project has set. For the first time, close to 30-40% of an FPSO was put together in Nigeria, exported to go tie-in, and here the FPSO is lying in Lagos, accepting tie-in. And so when I hear the executive secretary of NCDMB say that we must have add-on and additive effects for future projects, I can well understand that. My target is that over the next 10 years, Nigeria will develop an FPSO here locally. And that's not too much to ask. Become self-sufficient in its own power provision. And that over the same period, we begin to mutate away from crude oil, as it were, to very refined, clean provision of fossils. My target is that over that same period, investment in the sector will be such that Nigerian companies and Nigerian entities and Nigerian shareholders will begin to move from a minuscule 10% today, Niger Delta militancy issue, not always final, but at least we've moved it from a point where we are an all-time production of 1 million barrels today to near full recovery of our barrels. To find a way of engagement that respects the community, focuses on their need and takes them serious, not just as agitators, but indeed as partners in the process of the exploration of crude and natural resource. A lot more engagements to take place, a lot more work to be done, and I'm giving as much time together with my colleague Niger Delta in the engagement aspects of it, in the development aspect of it, as we also give into oil exploration. If we continue this and can focus on home communities, we can find the peace that are essential ultimately to be able to operate in this country without difficulties. We've addressed refineries. It may not be very obvious, but for the first time, we're creating a model where private investment is going into our dilapidated refineries. Some of those will be announced over the next one month. And we're still targeting to be able to get these refineries up and running from the about 14% utilization capacity today to about 90 to 95% over the next 18 to 20 months. If we do that, hopefully we'll begin to move very drastically to self-sufficiency in production of refined petroleum products. We see queues, and I must thank NNPC most substantially because on Tuesday or Wednesday last week, I gave them a marching order that whatever it took, I didn't want my visitors coming into Abuja to see queues. When I came back this weekend, I was very, very happy to see that a lot of work had been done. So let's give them a round of applause. There are other areas that we've looked at that we've made a lot of success in. The area of legislation and regulation. We've been able to bring out the gas policy, we've been able to bring out the petroleum policy, we submitted the fiscal policy to the Federal Executive Council. We've held that back to enable us to have this sort of conference and discussion that are essential to fine-tune and make sure everybody's on board. The Assembly itself has done its yeoman job of passing the PIGB, waiting for the executive to. So a lot has happened over a period of 2 years, even in the legislative and policy area. We started the early renewal of leases way before time. We're moving at it as rapidly as we can. We're looking at potentially going into marginal fields releases. So everything that needs to be tackled here has been. But one of the biggest things that we have done is open up this sector so that people can see it. Today, NNPC publishes its reports. The Petroleum Ministry is as active in the web as any other ministry. And more important, some of the fundamental changes that have happened in NNPC have changed the scope from just being a parastatal of size to a parastatal of efficiency. So people are focused on core businesses. People are focused on being able to compete. Those models will continue to get worked, and I thank Dr. Makanti-Barrow for continuing that whole philosophy. But we're going to continue to work. It's a long road to freedom. But that road, we're going to take the first innovative steps that will enable us to free up this sector and make it productive. And so as I welcome all of you today, I ask everybody to look at the potential challenges that we face. Africa is probably the continent with the least supply of power. And until power is available, this continent cannot move. Nigeria, obviously, with its 180 million people and growing at a very rapid rate, is critically in need of power. That power won't have unless gas projects become incentivized and happen rapidly. Now, what's stopping us from that? Africa is the only one where we still import most of our petroleum products from abroad, whereas we have refineries and we have the crude. Just a non-starter. Why? What is stopping us from that? Africa is still the only ones where there are question marks in terms of whatever activities we have in the oil sector, whether we're doing the very best that we can. What's stopping us from improving? Africa is still the only area where, with vast amounts of resources, the owners of this resource all over the nation and all over African countries continue to cry for neglect and abandonment. There are so much challenges, and sometimes you ask yourself, what is holding Africa back? What is it about Africa that prevents it from taking the bold steps that is essential for it to move, and actually win the liberation that it's essential to make it a continent of envy. But let me give you the silver lining. The silver lining is that as most developed countries are reaching basically the peak of their development, Africa today, with its bushes and wildlife and resources, remains a continent yet untapped, abundant potential possibilities unlimited. If we do the right things at the right time, with the right energy, with the right opportunities, Africa can begin to move. I am hoping that this summit will be the very beginning of that movement. I thank you very much.